Hi, everyone, and welcome to Resource Revolution, the resource management podcast. I'm your host, Christine Robinson, and on this podcast, we will discuss the real-life experiences of people in and around the world of resource management. Our guest today is Allan Koltin, CEO of Koltin Consulting Group. Though in our industry, Allan really needs no introduction, I will give some background to our listeners before we get started. Allan, you're widely regarded as the go-to advisor for top firms in our industry, a trusted voice at the center of the most important conversations and decisions shaping the future of our profession. He's been voted one of the most recommended consultants by Inside Public Accounting and recognized by CPA Practice Advisor as a top 25 thought leader, earning a place in their Accounting Hall of Fame. Allan is also a founding member of the Advisory Board, a think tank for the accounting profession, and the author of several books on firm management and growth. In 2023 and 2024, Allan was ranked as one of the 2 most influential people on Accounting Today's top 100 most influential people list, out of 100, twice. With expertise spanning strategy, governance, profitability, compensation, growth, human capital, succession, and M&A, his insights have been featured in major publications like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Financial Times. Known for his ability to inspire and energize audiences. For those watching, get excited. We're in for something special. So, Allan, your reputation precedes you. If I'm honest, I've been trying to get you on this podcast for quite some time. You are a legend in our industry, and it's a true privilege to have you here today.
Christine, thank you so much. But you're actually the legend. You are one of the top podcasters in the world. And I was having breakfast with my family today, and I said, I can't mess this up. I'm finally with Christine, so thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to get into this. Let's jump right in. So I'd like to start with strategy conversations. You are in the boardroom quite a bit, right? So it's interesting. What are the top themes? What are people talking about?
Yeah, I'd put it in the top 3.
Okay.
Talent, technology, transformation.
Okay.
And they're all hitting at the same time. Talent, the model that got us to the dance doesn't work anymore. Kids have many other choices, even with accounting majors, to do things, and we're feeling the pain. Technology, what used to take 200 people hours can now be done by the flip of a switch. And transformation, compliance. Firms are trying to move from compliance services where they became the trusted advisor to now move to becoming the most valuable advisor. And that means transforming from a compliance business to advisory, consulting, outsourcing. We call them impact services, migrating from trusted advisor to most valuable advisor. To do all that takes a lot of capital. To have a lot of capital, you need someone that has a lot of money. So you have all those themes going on, and maybe just to round it out and use a 4th T, trouble. Most firms are making more money than they ever dreamed, back to back to back, record years of profit. But they're killing themselves. They're hitting the glass ceiling. So you have all these strategic issues going on. There's finally something to talk about. You know, the accounting profession started in 1887, and for 137 years, we were essentially in a protected shell. We could offer compliance services because the buyer needs them. You know, nobody ever says October 16th or April 16th, I don't know, I can wait another 364 days to have my tax return done, right?
Right.
That'd be a weird client. Nobody ever gets a financial statement and says, oh my gosh, that footnote on deferred income taxes, that's a doozy. I mean, that'd be a weird client. You'd have to fire that client.
Agreed.
So we are no longer in this protected shell. And the boardrooms, the strategy discussion is unparalleled. There has been more strategic discussion in the last 4.5 years than the first 40 for me.
It's amazing. It's quite the shift.
Yeah.
Quite the shift.
And it's not going back. You know, at some point you'll probably ask me to make a bold prediction about the next 5. And I'll tell you what, as much change has gone on in the last 5, the next 5 will have even more.
Incredible. Exciting, though, too.
Exciting and scary.
Sure.
Yeah. But as you know, as the saying goes, when the changes outside the boardroom are happening faster than the changes inside the boardroom, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Lots to keep up with.
Yeah.
You're constantly dealing with a number of different leaders in different areas, different parts of the country, certainly different firms. What are they thinking about too much? What are they thinking about maybe not enough?
You know, that's a great question, and it's really where their place is in society. And what I mean by that is some still run like real partnerships. And as the proverbial expression goes, no one can say yes, but anyone can say no.
Oh, yes.
You know, we lovingly call this the dysfunctionality of the partnership model. Some are still partnerships, not necessarily private equity owned, but they've moved to a corporate way of doing things. And they're built for speed. Things come to a point, decisions get made. And now we have this new entrant is the PE-owned or PE-run accounting firm. And talk about raising the bar on performance.
Yeah.
They have.
Oh, I can only imagine. It's a shift. It's probably a mindset shift, all kinds of change management. But I hear you. My experience has been the speed and the pace at which things are running. It sounds like that's increasing. Certainly, it's that consensus culture that's sort of bottlenecks innovation. I would say sometimes it sounds like you've experienced that the change.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's minute to minute. How far ahead are firms looking today in terms of their strategy?
Well, we never leave the 5-year window.
Okay.
I think for the simple fact that when things are changing so fast, talking about looking out 10 years is impossible. Right now, if I had to capture a snapshot of where they're looking in 2025 to 2030.
Wow.
And
okay.
I think it goes something like this. Each year for the next 5 years, 20% of the work, the preparation of a financial statement, the preparation of a tax return, will increase virtual by AI. There will be technology doing it, and the supplement to technology will probably be offshoring.
Sure.
So firms have stated goals of 25% of all billable hours done offshore, 20% more a year. Artificial intelligence, what took 200 people hours can now be done flip of a switch. And the picture it paints in 2030 is an exciting and scary one.
Oh, yeah.
Remember when you were a little kid and you'd see those TV commercials? It's an 11 o'clock at night. Parents, do you know where your kids are?
Yes.
Well, now it's 2030, and technology and offshore is doing the preparation of the entire financial statement and tax return. What will you be doing?
Yeah.
So, there's so many levers on that switch. Training, highest and best use of time. What will we be doing?
Yeah. It's interesting. And I'll say it probably depends a little bit on the individual's personality, right? Some people are excited for change and some are very apprehensive about that. I would say, I'm not a CPA myself, but I have worked with them quite a bit within the accounting space, and I would generally say they're risk averse people. As I said earlier, I say that with love. I am married to an accountant, but it's got to be different, right, for them.
So you're talking to someone that for 45 years, and I'm an accountant too, so I can poke fun, has studied the brain of not just the accountant, but the accounting firm. And the takeaways, not for all, there's outliers, but they don't like change. Mm-hmm. They're steady eddies. They like to perform predictable behaviors. They do not like risk or change. So you take that overlay, and the challenge that the C-suite always has is to move immovable objects towards something different. But you look at 2030, and I'll tell you there's probably 3 kinds of partners in accounting firms of all sizes. There's the ones that today have already migrated from the trusted advisor to the most valuable advisor. They do it because it's a natural act. They've always been doing it. They do it on the back of the napkin because they don't have time, but they do it. The second one is the one that has the skill but can't, because if you remember the old Lucy show, they're on the production line making the product. Yes, I'd love to do that with my client. If I had a dream, if there was a way to lift this work away from me, I could go there. But there's a third one that lives in the production of the product and probably doesn't have the skill set to go from trusted to most valuable. I worry about that one. So what the profession needs to be doing more of and firms need to be doing more of is creating training to build us more as advisors. How to lead a podcast, how to run a strategic planning session, how to be a profit improvement consultant, how to talk strategically about growth, how to talk about the tough decisions of the people side of the business. You know, we may have added a 5th year of accounting for the kids coming out of school, but those skill sets, we need on-the-job training to really perfect those.
Well, that's exactly it, right? In a way, what you described, that traditional profile, right, of an accountant and an accounting partner, we've trained them to do that, right? Yes. So that's exactly right. Part of it is on leadership to set them up for success, right? Give them build up those capabilities so that they can be successful, right, in that new world order, as we say.
Yeah, Christine, if I could just let me paint a picture of this 2030 and talk about it being done in another industry or two already. Do you remember when there used to be life insurance agents?
Yeah.
You can't find any life insurance agents because they're today certified financial planners.
That's right.
And pre-technology, they used to sit at the desk and do all the legwork of putting the quotes and the premiums and this and that together. Today, they push a button. And what has that done? It's transformed them to spend more time getting business, building client relationships, and hopefully growing talent and people around them. Think of the old days of a stockbroker. They pick stocks and think of their desk with all the spreadsheets and this and that and figure it out. You know, I call my wealth advisor today. If I called that person a stockbroker, they'd be insulted. Sure. But I happened to do that a couple of years ago. One of my kids was working on a project and we had to pick a stock. And I called Ben and Murray and I said, can you give us a stock? We need to track it for a year. And he said, Allan, I'm almost like taken back that you'd even think I would do that. Right. I'm like, well, you do manage my money. It's in equities. Like I thought no, there's an algorithm. There's technology. You tell me the risk you want and we plug it in. I go, wow. I said, that's interesting. Well, what do you do? What do I do is I spend more time with the clients on things that matter to them. I bring in more business and I grow people. Yeah. So this is really enlightening. The message on the college campuses to the kids has to be, you're not getting replaced with AI technology. No, you're going to get pushed from A1 to A3 on day one. Right. We got you covered. That work that you said you could keep you could talk about keeping your phone in the charger. Right. And you can keep your brain in the charger. Yeah. We're going to bring you in the fire that much quicker.
It is exciting, and it's a stark contrast, right, from what we've seen. But those are two really good examples, right, because it's about zooming out from the narrow focus of this industry and realizing what has happened broadly, globally, and in many different industries, and by the way, has been successful. So let's talk more about that. Let's talk about growth. Yeah. We talked about strategy a little bit. There are things certainly that firms need to consider in order to be successful in the future and set themselves up that way. But you and I both know it's not all sunshine and roses. So every family has at least a little bit of dysfunction, right? So let's get spicy. When there is an issue, where is that usually stemming from? Is it pricing? Is it people? What have you seen?
Is there an all of the above category?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's, when I tell people I've spent 45 years advising accounting firms, they say, I feel sorry for you. What a boring specimen. Which I always say it could be worse. They could be actuarials, right? But it depends on size of firm, where they are in their life cycle, the level of risk, and how great they want to be. This is the big month where the benchmarking data comes out. Sure. And we always talk in terms of 4 quadrants: highest performing, pretty good, average, and not so good. Mm-hmm. And do you know that there are a lot of firms in that bottom quartile? I'll get calls from them. They're interested in looking at private equity. And I say to them, I'm sorry, but you don't qualify for the loan. Oh. And they say, what do you mean? I said, well, they have to create EBITDA, and there's no excess compensation. You're making the minimum, so you're not a candidate. But yet at the same time, there are firms in that quartile that are happy.
Sure.
They don't care what anyone else does. So that's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Like I always say, like low performers, you know who they hate? High performers.
Oh, yes.
But guess what? High performers don't like low performers.
Yeah. And that's a bit of human nature, right, as well. And it's sometimes I really think it's a little bit of a social experiment, right? When you look at the dynamics of any organization, but in particular accounting firms that have operated in a very structured, I'd say predictable way, right? Especially with the partnership model. So it's interesting. You touched upon some of that change and readiness, right? Mental readiness to make that change. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke in prep for this podcast, and we had a conversation about this idea of, at times, a larger firm, but is it really a larger firm, or is it, I've seen in my own experience, I've called it kind of a bunch of little kingdoms, right, that operate, to use your word, fiefdoms, right? It's kind of the same idea. And what that has resulted in, again, I'm not the technical accountant. I'm not the one delivering to the client. But in my experience, from a resource management perspective, that has manifested itself in things like a Bay Area West Coast office intentionally choosing to hire people and bring them into their business unit, despite the fact that there are available qualified resources somewhere in New York. And it's maddening. What's your take on that?
Well, people always say to me, it's not about partner comp. And I always say it's always about partner comp. I picked that up from Wayne Burson at BDO, and I've kept that forever in the back of my mind, that we are all creatures of habit and, in a way, Pavlov's dog, the compensation reward. So in that case that you just gave, their comp is based on the profitability of their office, and sending it somewhere else, not going to happen, because we want to build our own metrics. The question I always ask firms when I meet them for the first time, who runs the firm? And they seem sort of dumbfounded. I said, let me frame it differently. Do the partners run the firm, or does the firm run the partners?
Interesting. And
you can pretty much figure out that. The second one is where you're going, and I say, are you a country or a country club? And they say, what does that mean? I said,
I like that.
A country, we come together, the firm comes first. We do it the one right way.
Yeah.
And the reason we do that is everybody's cross-trained. We can move work around. Efficiency leads to profitability. Profitability leads to extra compensation and those kinds of rewards that come with it. A country club, we come together once a month, and leadership says, we're going to go from weekly time reporting to daily time reporting. And someone speaks up and says, what a great idea. However, for our department, our business unit, we can't do that because we're always traveling or whatever the excuse is.
Sure.
But you all should go do that, but we're going to do our own thing. To which the next person says, yeah, I'm on board with, I'm going to keep it like we have it also.
Absolutely.
You can't get traction. You can't get better. So you have that. And then the third and final thing I'm always looking at is the culture. The desire to be better, continuous improvement. Do you want to be best in class, or do you want to just be in the class? Or do you maybe, that's just not important at all? Firms are cut differently, and here's the crazy thing. I worked with first-generation firms that were lights out, and now it's the third generation, and it's 20 years later. The only thing that connects the third generation to the first is the name on the door. Everything else has changed. So you can never get content in this business, because in 2, 3, 4 years, it'll eat you alive.
It's so true. And there's a lot to that with the multi-generational workforce. And it almost feels that regardless of the size of the firm, the services that they offer, and I'm sure you've seen this, right? I imagine in your conversations, I love that you said it's the culture, because I would venture to say, regardless of your industry, you have to want it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think firms have finally gotten religion. The old days of measuring the metrics of the billable hours and this and that. Like there's a number that your people are going to get to, but they're not going to get beyond that. So let's focus less on the quantity and now the quality of those hours so we can drive a higher rate because they're delivering more valuable things.
Yeah.
So I think that's more where the overall movement is today.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious then with that, let's call it dysfunctional arrangement, right?
Yeah.
When you're seeing that type of thing happen, as you say, within the culture, what is PE's appetite for that type of behavior?
They like it because they see it as an opportunity. We have 150 private equity clients. We had none in the year 2020. Sure. So you can imagine what has gone on. So I've studied them almost as closely as the accounting firms. They are in the business of raising EBITDA during their stay, making it more profitable, and exiting at a higher multiple than they paid. Mm-hmm. Now, what I've learned, just like the accounting profession, there's an upper third, there's a middle third, and there's a bottom third or quartiles, whatever you want to use. It's the same with them. There are some that they see people businesses and they're experienced and they love it and they understand. They get it. And there are some that they're almost like glorified bookies in Las Vegas or online sports. They just see a spread and arbitrage. And they're almost like a leasing agent. They're in there for a couple of years, and then they're not. So they come in all different shapes and sizes. And, we use private equity as the umbrella. It's gone beyond private equity. It's sovereign wealth funds. It's pension funds. It's family office. There was a deal that happened recently where 3 billionaires got together and said, boy, it'd be nice to own an accounting firm. And
Wow.
They did, and they do. So buyers are coming every which way. I remember being on the call with a teacher's pension fund. I won't say what state or what it is. And I swear to you, I thought I got on the wrong Zoom call. And they said, no, we're interested. So, yeah, and we're just at the beginning of this. So private equity, there's some fatal flaws that they'll walk away from. If it's really a dysfunctional house and they don't like each other and they don't trust each other, they're probably not getting involved. That's too hard a people business to fix.
Right.
But if there are things where you could plug in offshoring and you could do things like technology and you could take them from local to regional or regional to national, there are low-hanging fruit type things you can do to make them better.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Is that what excites you about this?
Yeah, it's I look at it for not so much the old guard because they're sort of at the end.
Right.
I mean, look, they're taken care of in these deals. Let's say they were going to get 2.5 times what their average income was, and they're going to get it over 10 years as ordinary income. 3x that number, and put it all up front today. That's the kind of thing going on. Internal valuations of accounting firms, if we took the truth serum, they're probably worth 35 cents on a dollar, and the day after they're worth $2. I mean, it's the money. I don't want to say it's stupid because these are very smart people entering our profession, but they have found a way to get better decisions made, faster decisions made, and tougher decisions that the dysfunctionality of the partnership model wouldn't allow.
Yeah.
So again, I always want to be very careful on this. It's not the silver bullet. You can stay independent and never take outside ownership. But if you're going to compete today on the big, mid-size, or small stage, you better have a strategy, you better have capital, and you better have something that, sort of makes you unique versus the competition.
It's really interesting, and I think that example really brings it to life, right? Because we hear a lot about, hey, PE is coming into accounting. What does it mean? But what does it mean, right? It's interesting. I remember hearing about Eisner, and it felt shocking, and there was a lot of chatter around that. So it's interesting. Firms are going down this path. it hasn't been going on for that long, right? Relative to the existence of the industry and the profession. What are they learning? They have this PE, they're PE back now, and what are they learning?
I think you learn another level of discipline. I think I'm not suggesting we weren't disciplined before, sure. But I think we've now learned that if we're going to say we're going to do something, there's an accountability level to do it. The two A's, it's sort of the goalposts, like football: accountability and autonomy. We all love autonomy, but damn, we can quickly see in our other partners that they're not accountable and someone needs to hold them accountable. It's never us that needs more accountability, but in a more accountable, I don't care if it's called an accounting firm, a sports team, any kind of business, if you set goals and you set the discipline and if you have what we'll call the willingness to be managed and held accountable for performance, you're going to outperform the autonomous firm where, to use a football analogy, just because I know you're in Philadelphia and you've got the second best NFL team in the country behind my Green Bay Packers, it's like being in a huddle. There's 11 of us, and every play we go do something different because we'd like to. Mm-hmm. And when we don't huddle because there's no need to plan. We all do our thing. Would you rather invest in a firm like that? Or would you rather invest in something that looks like the Philadelphia Eagles or the Green Bay Packers?
Yeah. It's fascinating for a couple of different reasons, right? We talked about the traditional partner. Again, not to generalize, right? But I'm curious your take on this. There's what you're describing is a little bit different than I am a partner. I will do what I want when I want to do it. And ultimately, that's who's in charge. Mm-hmm. It sounds like that's shifting a little bit.
There's a little bit of giving up. I think what I would say is you're still going to be a partner. There's a partner track. But for many people, becoming a partner is almost like tenured professor. The problem with tenured professors, you can't fire them. The problem with a partner historically is they can do whatever they want. Yep. And in a highly accountable firm, that's a technical distinction. Look, I remember when I was a senior manager before you were born, and my mother-in-law would introduce me at the country club. This is my son-in-law, Allan. He's a bookkeeper, or he's an accountant, like almost like shameful. Today, the day after, the week after I made partner, she said, "Oh my God, this is my son-in-law. Yeah. He's a partner in a big accounting firm." Right. I was like, "Wait a second. All I did was change, from senior manager to partner." But it matters to a lot of people. But with it, I think a lot of them historically thought it's a privileged class. No.
Well, that's exactly right. What's the is there an ego thing associated with that? And how does that feel to people now with this new environment?
I have to be very careful in my wording, because what I want to say to you is the uneducated will say, I'm not going to be told by some PE fund what to do. Like there's some 34-year-old MBA sitting there, and there's spreadsheets on what you do every day. Yeah. Almost like there's a camera on you. Right. I said in 99.9% of the situations, you'll never even talk to or see the PE firm. Mm-hmm. What they do is they pick great leaders in accounting firms because they don't want to run a daycare center. They have their own job. So what I've noticed in the deals that have happened so far, and in the top 30, maybe there's been 15 of them, 16 now, they spend their time being an enabler, providing strategy and capital. Call us when you need us, but we don't want to get in your way. You were successful before you met us. Keep doing what you're doing. It's almost as if private equity has created a scenario where you're still an independent firm, but you now have a financial sponsor. Mm. And, you can imagine I'm envisioning this podcast getting replayed. And the emails that come in, and I'm always thinking about the fiercely independent firm. Right. Like, Allan, well, you need to you need to mention that you don't have to do private equity.
Right.
I go, you're right. But you do need to have a strategy that if private equity is now providing equity rewards to everybody in the company and giving them a piece of the rock, much like an ESOP does, you have to have a counterpunch to that. So maybe with your upper 10%, maybe in addition to a bonus now, you're giving them, call it phantom stock, equity that they someday can cash in and convert it to getting equity in the business. You can't not do anything. Maybe your internal valuation, after all these years, maybe the market has now said it's worth more. So maybe we have to change this, even though we've had the same program for 117 years. So, getting those, I don't call them fights, but those discussions won in the boardroom has become, you can only imagine the chaos that goes on. And it's not just young and old, it's business-minded versus traditional-minded.
Yeah. That's interesting. I imagine some contentious conversations there See, I get why you find this interesting, right? It is a little, it's a hot takes from Allan Koltin. You heard it here. Told you we were going to get a little spicy. So what are those firms that you're advising firms, right? Should they take PE investment? Should they look into that? Are there certain types of firms, as you described, right, that are more easily able to adapt to PE investment?
Yeah, I think where they have moved, they could still be partnerships. There's nothing wrong with that. But the running, leading, managing of the business is a corporate model. And you sort of line up. I don't want to say you do what you're told, but there's a culture where it's all about getting better. It's about, don't tell me all the good stuff I'm doing. Tell me the things that I'm not that good at.
Right.
I want to be better. I want to be worth more to the firm. I want to justify a higher rate. I want to continue to grow. Coach me.
Yeah.
And so when there's that culture, that mentality, that's a lot easier than, as you described, I call it a fiefdom, but it's sort of like 20 sole practitioners disguised to look like a real firm. No, it's all they do is they're leveraging their purchasing power.
Yes.
And once in a while leaning in, helping someone else, but not really.
It's fascinating then, again, I think about the people, right? Whether maybe it's a partner, it's a senior, it's a manager, it's someone who is internal, right? That I hate back office, right? But back office, right? Functions. So word on the street is that some partners in this PE environment are feeling a bit like they're walking on eggshells, right? Mm-hmm. It's different. Is some of that in their head? Is some of that real? I can't say, right? Who's to say? But it's interesting that if that's how they're feeling, what about the folks who are in operations, right? This is a completely different thing. They've seen leaders who are, in some cases, or at least perhaps they're not walking on water, but they think that they're walking on water, right? And they're thinking, hey, I'm in this operational role, I'm in this support role, I'm not directly generating revenue. They're shaking in their boots. What do you have to say about that?
So you asked 3 questions in one.
I did.
Okay. So I'm going to take the first 2, and that's going to create the third one, but
please.
We haven't talked about it. So the first element is admin people, not producing revenue.
Yeah.
I would tell you in old school, we always talk about how many professionals you have, and they leave the admin people out. And I'm like, no, how many client service people do you have and how many admin? Everyone's a professional or they wouldn't be here,
Absolutely.
right? So let's take that off the table. Number 2, they don't ever get discussed with having ownership in a business. In the PE model, they become, the higher up talented ones get a piece of the rock. So they're really excited about this. They also like the fact that now it can be run more like a business, which actually helps to make them that much more efficient. But you were also talking about the partner and the worry that, private equity is tracking them.
Yes.
So you tell me, pretend you're a practice partner, you're working 2,400 hours a year, and 1,200 of them are billable, chargeable. Sure. And I say to you, hey, Christine, what do you do with the other 1,200 hours? I'm busy. I mean, it's everything other than billable time. Okay, like, well, what is that? Well, I'm annoyed already, Alan, that you're asking me.
Right.
But I mean, I have, it takes time to send bills. Well, why do you send the bills? Well, I do it for the client because they have to pay us. Oh, so that time probably should get charged directly or indirectly to the client, right? So why don't we add an admin fee for billing and handling on the bottom of the invoice? I go to CPE. Well, what kind of CPE? Well, it's so that I can get the minimum 40 hours a year. I go, but wait, you told me that you want to be worth more to the firm, to your clients. Why is your CPE sort of like because you have to? It should be because you want to, because don't you aspire to be a famous accountant in construction or a famous accountant in international tax? You should be the most excited.
Right.
As David Maister once called it, that's your investment time. So all we want to do with you is not talk about your income time. That's the 1,200 hours. I get that. We don't want to touch that. But I'll come back to that in a second. But on the other 12, this is about making you better. So let's take that as serious. Let's make investment time equal to income time. Now, I want to come back to you, Christine, on your income, those 1,200 hours.
Yeah.
400 of them, 1/3. I mean, that's brain surgery. I mean, when you're doing that, that's like Michael Jordan. You're in the zone. We love that. The second one is, there's someone down the hall, Christine, that could actually do that, do it as well as you, close enough. You're one of our best business getters. What if we took some of that work away and gave it to someone else? And the second I say that in your brain, how does that affect my comp? Human nature.
Yeah.
I said, don't worry, we got you covered. But Christine, seriously, like the bottom 400, I call that robbing from the cradle. I mean, you're not going one level below, you're going two. Why do you do that? Well, sometimes it's just easier to do it. It's less headache. I don't have to rework it. I don't have to explain it. Whoa, we're in the people business, growing people. That's on your list of things to do. No. You gotta say to those people, your goal is to steal the client from me. My goal is to help you. So we're just trying to custom fit you, make you better. But if your brain says, and many in the accounting profession and the world feel this way, good enough is good enough. I know you're not driven that way. You just, if this podcast was getting rated and there were, 25,000 and 24,995 said you were awesome, but 5 said you were just so, you would be up all night. You would be upset because you're driven for optimal performance. But not everybody is. Yeah. So private equity is trying to take average and make it above average. Some are trying to make above average really good, and some are trying to make really good great. And I'm not sure that's a private equity thing. I think that's just smart business, people business.
Agreed.
Let's make our people better.
Agreed. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I was going to ask you more about the type of partner that firms need to have right now. You mentioned that a little bit, getting into the psyche of that leader that thrives in that culture. What traits do they need to be successful?
I think the number one trait is to accept failure.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Get into the pond and know that to be successful, you have to fail a lot. We as accountants are not used to failing. We tell our clients what they need to know. We deliver on time. Sometimes we even can show a little empathy and love. At least the better ones can. And now you're pushing me into a zone that there could be risk. Christina, I've got my book of business. I got a $2.5–3 million book. I got people doing the work. You use those terms, hunter and farmer. And you said, I have hunting skills, but I'm doing too much farming. And I sort of asked you, what do you mean by that? Well, hunting is going out and getting more business. Farming is handling what you have. And, you shared with me, like there's 4 buckets. This isn't like baseball, 5-tool players, you're good at all these things.
Yeah.
So if my highest and best use is winning business, I should be getting rid of the other things. If my highest and best use is managing a client base, the buck stops with me. I manage client expectations. I make sure they know all the services we have. I don't lease the client relationship. I own it. Or I'm a technician. I don't have the desire or want or maybe the people skills to do that. But boy, you lock me in a room and I can give you 1,500 chargeable hours.
Sure.
I had a friend once, his name was Bob. I won't use his last name because he'll probably watch this, but we called him Billable Bob.
Oh.
We used to say Billable Bob went through withdrawal on weekend.
Yeah.
But we learned with Billable Bob that when he had interactions with the staff, mysteriously the staff ended up leaving the firm 3 to 6 months later. So we moved Bob to the 32nd floor and had no human contact. We'd put the food under the door. He would come back empty. I never saw Bob ever again, but he was highly chargeable. So they will custom fit people based on their passion, what they're really good at, and they'll challenge you to get rid of or give away things that hold you back. That's this accountability versus autonomy.
And now a word about our sponsors, Dayshape. Do you ever feel like your team spends more time managing spreadsheets than getting actual work done? If you're a strategic leader in a professional services firm, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Say goodbye to the chaos with Dayshape. Dayshape is an AI-powered platform that takes the stress out of resource management. Imagine scheduling, planning, and staffing all being handled in one smart system that actually understands your business. Sounds too good to be true? Believe me, I dreamt of having this type of technology when I was a resource management leader. It's like having a superpower for your firm, boosting productivity, profitability, and even employee happiness. Plus, it seamlessly integrates with your existing tools, so there's zero disruption. Do you want to see the magic in action? Check out dayshape.com and see how your resource management function can be elevated to a more strategic position. Trust me, your team and your CEO will thank you. I love this idea of, I'll say this differently. It's new to hear the word passion in the public accounting industry, right? That's probably not the word that you would have heard, 20 years ago. Well, to your point around the client kind of, it would be a little odd, right? But I think it's interesting. It's such a shift. And when a firm is, you mentioned, so the opposite of Billable Bob, right? The firm that's trying to grow their people. We think about that traditional path, the work hard, keep your head down, trust the process, strive to become a partner. How do you see that mindset shifting with the kids these days?
The kids today are way more smarter than the generation before. And the simplest example I can give you is when I was a kid, a young kid, I had a question. I'd go in the family room, I'd stand on a chair, and they had the World Book Encyclopedia or Encyclopedia Britannica, and I'd open it up, and I'd read a paragraph that was written by someone 10 years before my reading it, and I sort of concluded, God, that'd be interesting to learn someday. The kid today, I mean, we talk about someday having the bot or AI built in. It's already built in. They go to ChatGPT, they do what they want. It's very accessible. And it's instantaneous.
That's right.
If you just stop and think about how much knowledge a 25-year-old has today, you're closer to that age group, so I'm going to put you on that side of the table. But versus someone of my age, I mean, the first thing older has to understand is the younger one is so much smarter than you. They've already forgotten more than you know. However, experience matters because experience takes unpredictable events and gives you predictability. You've been there before. This isn't your first rodeo. So there has to be a common coming together, if you will. But I think the days of the sweatshop where they're gonna work and do this, no, they're looking for better ways, technology, resource management. Mm-hmm. There has to be a smarter way to do this. And, we all sort of laugh sometimes, like we'll sit in a meeting and say, why is this process or system exist?
Yeah.
And I'm because I've been now on my third generation of firms, I said, well, there's actually a story. The reason this is here,
right.
None of you were here, but I was, is because this is what happened and we said never again. Never again because of legal liability. Never again because a group of partners could leave the firm. Never again because a client could get upset. We put a process in place, and there's 42 steps with the process. But because we're so busy being busy, no one has the time to sit down and say, stop the clock.
Right,
There's a better way to do this. Yeah. So I think they're more, not just knowledgeable, not just more tech savvy. I think they're looking for smarter, not more. You know, they say to me, Mr. Koltin, less is more. Like, this is insanity. Okay, well, let's hire someone. Let's use someone that can help us through this journey.
It's interesting. I'd say that group of people and the managers, the seniors, it's the same as what you described, right? There's those A players. You want to retain those A players. The other thing that's curious about this is, let's be real, the public accounting profession, it's called busy season for a reason, right? It's this hours heavy, or there's a perception that it's an hours heavy role. There is a idea that for those individuals that are cranking out those hours in busy season, that private equity coming in is going to be, it's going to exacerbate that. Hit your target. Did you make your utilization? Bleed them dry during that time. What do you say to them?
So, I'll give a real life example, and I'm trying to think of the individual's name. I can see her, but she was, came in and she was talking about partnership tax returns, and she's young. And she said, Mr. Koltin, let me give you a little education here. By the time I did my 15th partnership return, I knew how to do one. But if you think I'm going to sit here and do 1,500 of these, right, you're out of your mind. Now, there's someone else sitting in the room that they just want to do those 1,500. They don't want to have a lot of human contact. They love practicing the trade. So the dynamic there is, let that person do it, free the other person up to do something that they're better suited at. But private equity looks at that equation and says, wait, you're attacking the wrong problem. The problem is that we can take 80% of that compliance that you're doing to make the product, to make the partnership return, and we can do that through AI and or offshoring.
Right.
So it's a new day. As the saying goes, private equity, when they get together at their conferences, they say you should be in the accounting profession. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit, which is code for this is the EBITDA we're starting at, this is the EBITDA we're going at, and what comes with that, the stereotype of the accounting people saying all they care about is making money.
Yeah.
To which I say, let's just pretend we're in business to make money. What a novel idea.
Right.
We operate sometimes as 501c3s. I mean, we're profit is good, because profitability, I mean, if you go beyond the accounting profession, it's really not an accounting firm. It's not an audit firm. It's not a tax firm. It's a people business.
Right.
And if you look at things in 10-year increments, the firm that can recruit, retain, and grow the best talent can have the best clients and charge the best fees, and we can take those best fees and we can invest them in getting even better. A weak firm can't do any of that.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? Because part of this is evolving, and what strikes me about that is traditionally we've been in the business of the billable hour. Don't even get me started. I know there's a whole lot of conversation about that in chatter. Is that how we measure that? Are we even measuring the right thing? But that being said, it's interesting that the people, right, we're selling their time, and that is certainly generating the revenue, but labor cost is also the biggest line item, right? And it's very interesting to me then. I'm very passionate about resource management, as you know, that isn't it surprising with that being the case that firms are not thinking about resource management that much? We see this changing a little bit, but I'm always racking my brain and I'm thinking, why are they not thinking about it? What's your sense? Should a firm's approach to the overall management of their resources, is that a C-suite level? Is that worth a C-suite level conversation?
I'm laughing because I'll use day-shape as an example, and suddenly,
Please.
You and your team are everywhere. Like when I'm in now with the top 20, it's the exception is who's not working with you because all the others are, and when I'm with the top 40, they're all asking.
Yeah.
And resource management has finally become certified.
Yes.
It matters. It's a differentiator. I'm not sure 20, 30 years ago there was, no. Mm-hmm. We were old school procedures and policies. And how did we get better? We went to a conference and we asked someone else what they were doing, right, and we copied that. Today it's a new world. Everybody's got their own playing field. So, yeah, resource management, if you were to ask me what's the 5 things that are the difference between the uber successful, mm-hmm, and I'm playing in the pond now of the upper 10%,
yeah, versus
the others, resource management is my short list item of things they do that much better. Mm-hmm. But, there's a lot of people that think they know it, think they know it all. Whatever idea you come up with, sometimes they've tried that and it didn't work. Yeah. I love the outsourcing one. Outsourcing has been around for over 25 years. And I will have a firm today. I can't say where I was yesterday because you'll know the firm, but I was asking them, I'm like, what about offshoring? Like you're telling me you're going to kill yourself. You're all working 3,000 hours. You can't find the people. And what about offshoring? Oh, we tried that in, 2001 or 2, we sent 100 tax returns to India, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
And you know where I'm going with this. Yeah. You say, okay, don't insult the person. Don't say right. What a terrible example. But no, you tried something like so narrow over 2 decades ago. Right. Like, no, this is like big stage today, and it's going on, and it's not just tax, it's audit, it's accounting, and it's leveled up. Mm-hmm. Staff, senior manager, director, etc.
Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah, so it's you have to hold these people's hands sometimes, and getting change affected is the art. Yeah,
it's interesting. So I'm very passionate about this area, right? So yeah. I will say one of the hats that I wear is I serve as president of the Resource Management Executive Forum. So this brings together the heads of resource management from a number of public accounting firms. We're focused on the CPA firm. Yes. The very powerful thing about that is each of our members is sponsored by a leader in their organization. So there are COOs, chief people officers, heads of audit. I think we have one CFO in there. And in my discussions with them and our discussions as a group, there are a couple of things that have come up. 3, I would say, main themes. One is offshoring. I know that won't be a surprise to you, whether that is investing in it in the first place. What does that mean? How do we do that? And if they already have a center, which many do, how do we make that more efficient, right? How do we operationalize this in a better way? The second is AI, goes without saying. And the third really touches upon what you just described in terms of how do we do this? How do we do it right? There's a lot of reinventing the wheel that goes on related to resource management. And what I have found interesting, and this happened to me, by the way, is many of those leaders within these organizations are asking that the resource management leader, the resource management team, actually take on the offshore strategy a little bit. Why do you think that is?
Because they'll do it better.
Yeah, fair.
We are jacks of all trades. We get a lot of C pluses and B minuses. Give it to someone that knows what they're doing, and they'll ace it. And it's interesting. You talked about offshore, and you talked about technology. At a grassroots level with a partner, the specialist always can command a higher rate than the generalist. And you go into firms and you find out that they have 400 physicians spread over 10 different partners. To which you say is like, why don't we give it to 1 or 2? Because you're a dabbler. You spend half your time with physicians and half with contractors. Right. I couldn't think of 2 different groups.
Yeah.
But we're looking to create a famous firm and a famous person in construction. So why don't you take yours and give it to someone else, and let's custom fit their strategy to become the famous firm, the famous person in doctors, and you're going to become the famous person in construction. And our colleague over here, they've got 6 auto dealers, and they love automotive.
Yeah.
I mean, they're insanely passionate about it. They got 7 cars at their house. They live
Right.
for the automotive industry. Let's get rid of everything else from them and make them a specialist. And then you have some that just want to dabble in a lot of little things. And I said, well, if that's the case, then your unique skill should be all the years of experience you have, and you should take your skill and do more consulting and advising
Right.
of owner-operated businesses. Because I agree with you. You've seen everything. And I said, well, where's the continuing education program?
Right.
Where do I go to get trained? I said, stop. I said, you're already an expert. Go and tell your client that you want to meet with them once a month now. Instead of emailing the financials, you want to sit with them just like this.
Yeah.
And you're not going to charge for the first session or not. And we're going to take the first 15 minutes and you're going to talk about the financials. Well, no disrespect, Christine. Like, I appreciate you're giving me the financials on September 15th for what I did in August. I already know what I did in August,
Right.
but I'm already playing about October, November, December, and I've got the things that are keeping me up at night, and I got tough things, and you're going to stop the clock with me, and you're going to be my business coach. Well, I don't know. Do I need a certification to do that? You need a blank pad of paper and a pen and learn to ask good questions. Well, you know what? You're really not that good a listener, because I know you haven't listened to me. So we're gonna put you in a class on how to be a good listener. Learn to listen so you can listen to learn.
Oh, I love
and then
that.
ask great questions. And so these are the kinds of skill set developments that we can take generalists that still want to be generalists and make them better. Yeah, it's a new day. It's exciting. You know,
It is exciting. It is exciting. It's this. I would say it's what I'm hearing is that the new fast-paced nature of this is, in order to be successful, you have to have that consultative mindset of some kind. And it's a little bit of a shift from the general athlete to the specialist. And what does that mean alongside everything? You know, earlier you accurately assumed that I would ask you about some predictions. So with the AI, we can't not talk about AI. What do you think the human to AI version, you know, the ratio will be in this industry in the future?
So it'll go sort of 3 levels. I think it'll start with where the average partner or manager has a AI assistant.
Okay.
And there are just things we're smart enough to say, I don't know, but boy, I'm going to get to an answer here really easy. And that's level 1, and that's already in place. Mm-hmm. I think the second one is where it's a bit more sophisticated, and we're upgrading the AI support, and we're saying that there are actually processes that they can do that are repetitive, that we don't need to do anymore. And I'm going to have 3, 4, 5 AI assistants.
Okay.
But these are sort of higher level, custom fit to what I do. I think the third level of AI is you're the conductor in an orchestra. And those are all the musical instruments. And they're sort of running the process. Remember, we talked about the vision of 2030, the preparation of a financial statement tax return. They're doing it now, and that's going on. So that's, I believe, the migration of what's going on now. What they don't have is they don't have years of experience. They don't have years of experience in a service line or an industry. They don't have empathy. They don't have responsiveness. They don't have street smarts. They don't have the ability to handle the one-off when a client has something happen that's never happened to them before.
Right.
These are all things that the human being will always have. I mean, I could go on, trust, empathy, and, integrity. I mean, there's just so creativity. So these are the things that we will forever have. I can't tell you about 30 to 50 years from now. That could be a different thing.
Sure.
But in the world we can predict the next 5, 10 years, this is the migration.
It's fascinating. I agree. Could not have said it better myself. We've got this intersection, right? There's AI, there's this thing about not many campus hires with the accounting degrees. There's the requirements are changing, the offshoring, the PE disruption. There's a lot going on. It fascinates me then that, as you described, this workforce strategy, workforce planning, resource management is a differentiator, right, for firms that are successful. So why is it still an uphill battle in many organizations to get folks on a consistent resource management process?
It's a time thing. It just doses of medicine. I think we all want to push the button, have it happen.
Right.
The C-suite could be flawed. They could be not
Sure.
behind it. The firm may not be that profitable that they can invest real money in resource management.
Fair point.
Their culture is to do it by the cheap.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
yeah.
I've watched this over decades. You pick the position, I'll tell you the transformation. The HR person is somebody to do 20 years ago to do the compliance of the 401k
Sure.
and the benefits and this. And then it evolves to they can also do recruiting, and then it evolves to a chief people officer that oversees training and career development and recruiting and retaining. It's a migration.
It makes a lot of sense. One of the things that we find, especially with Dayshape having a lot of conversations in this space, is firms are interested in investing in technology. Certainly firms that are backed by PE. And what they find is it triggers this realization of, oh, we're not ready. Yeah. So it's interesting, right? It's exactly what you described. And part of that might be cultural. Part of that might be just the operational discipline of do they even have their data together? Do they have their process? Is that what you've been seeing?
Yeah. It's where you catch them in the race.
Yeah.
You know, if a new CEO ran on a platform where she said that we're not going to be in the bottom 50% of profit anymore, you know what? For the next couple of years, they're going to be tight on the purse strings,
right,
up to a point. You have to convince them why providing the resources you're talking about is going to make them more profitable, and that's not 5 to 10 years from today, because they want to show the partners that average partner income is going up today.
Sure.
I mean, you have cultures where I talk to partners, I see them at a conference, and I say, "So, how you doing? Good. Are you having more success?" Well, I haven't thought about that, but yeah, I made $625,000 last year, and the year before I made $550,000, and the year before $525,000. So yeah, I think I'm having success. That's how they're measuring it, and then I'll ask the question like, "Well, how is the CEO doing?" Well, I'm making more money, so they're doing pretty good. The measure is seriously, is that the best you got?
Right.
Like, no, the best CEO is not afraid to have some bumpy years because we're investing today for a better tomorrow. So culture, timing, the discipline, do they want to be great? It's all those elements, and where are they in their life cycle? And what are they dealing with? What are the things that they have on the platter already? What are the existing priorities? These things sometimes look so easy from the outside. But as I always say, if it were that easy, they would have done it already.
Absolutely.
It's what I say as the consultant.
Right.
Why am I here? And, the answers are hilarious. It ranges from, you're here because if I say it, they don't hear it. And it's like you fly in and you say it and you're the outside expert. And they look at the CEO and say, "Well, how come we haven't been talking about that?"
Yeah.
And the CEO goes, "Are you kidding? That's all we've been talking about. You just haven't heard it."
Oh, absolutely. And I know you speak in analogies, and I love that. I think that's I do believe a lot of leaders can paint that picture. But the first thing I thought of, so I have little kids, little kids. They're boys. They're they try to test the limits, right? I would say, and it's interesting because I'll tell them again and again, you have to do this, and then the teacher says the same thing, and they're like, "Oh, gotta do this," and it's like, come on, you guys, what is that?
I'm going to give you a little coaching on that one.
Please.
They actually hear you. Okay. They actually know you're right, but sometimes the human brain wants to get away with doing what's easier or more fun.
There you go.
But later in life, they will circle back to you and say, "Hey, Mom, I remember you used to say that." So they're hearing it. They're just not executing on it.
Well, I appreciate that because sometimes in the thick of it is It's not easy. I want to get to know a little bit of Allan. You've had a tremendous amount of experience, a tremendous amount of success. What is the best piece of business advice that you've ever received?
I heard the legendary football coach, Nick Saban, speak recently. I think I can mention where it was at Car Riggs and Ingram. It was their annual partner retreat. I was the undercard. I was the speaker before Mr. Saban, and he came up after. And he said something that talked about the human brain, the will to win, and the desire to be better. And it left sort of a lasting impact on me. And it went something like this, and I'm sure I'll chop it up. But he said, if you want to be happy for a day, eat a steak. If you want to be happy for, he said, if you want to be happy for an hour, eat a steak.
Okay.
He said, if you want to be happy for a day, go play a round of golf. If you want to be happy for a week, go on a cruise. If you want to be happy for a month, go buy a new car. But if you want to be happy with the success you're having in your business and personal life, when you wake up in the morning, and his words, not mine, and you want to get your lazy ass out of bed, the question you need to ask is, if I didn't show up at work today, would anyone miss me?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, talk about like spreading your wings and thinking not just about you, but making everybody about you better. And his commentary is, when you all are doing that in the right seats in the right bus and you're locking arms together, now you're going to be a winning organization. And so I think about every day trying to help firms to be better doing that. I know I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I've hung out in an industry, a profession, for 45 years. It has now had more change in the last 5 than the first 40. And the excitement is the next 5.
Yeah.
So if you want to know sort of the business side of me, they call me Coach K or Dr. Phil. It's helping them to get better.
Yeah.
And sometimes having someone from the outside that can talk about best practices of other firms. Well, heck, if they can do that, we're better than them. Let's do that, but let's do it better.
So, that was really powerful. It really is. Yeah. It really is inspiring, and that's good life advice, right? It's not just professional advice. Last question. I can see your excitement. You're passionate about this, and quite frankly, your role within this industry it's unique. It's something special. What would your childhood self think of what you're doing today?
They wouldn't believe it. We all have stages we go through. I guess As a young kid, I must have had some level of intelligence because I was a nationally ranked chess player.
There you go. Okay.
So Bobby Fischer was what we all emulated to be. So I guess strategy at an early age. Chess is strategy. It's outthinking the competition 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. I think if you saw me after that, I think I wanted to be a professional basketball player.
Okay.
I knew that wasn't happening. I think after that, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I thought that was the coolest thing. And this is before the letters ESPN even existed. But I came to realize that what I loved was marketing. I loved strategy. And my parents, were pretty precise with me. And this is 1975 talk. And they said, the best thing you could aspire to be would be a doctor. If you're not good enough to be a doctor, at least be a lawyer. But if you're not a doctor or a lawyer, at least be an accountant, because you'll always have a job.
Okay.
And so, as the story goes, I was a dual major. I was accounting and marketing. And if I can, I'll just because it was such a pivotal point in my career, it's 6 months in. I'm working at a firm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Nankin Schnall. Why am I there? Because my grade point average, I graduated in the upper 5% of the bottom 10% of the class.
Okay.
So I think out of loyalty, Howard Schnall, the managing partner, gave me a job. And because accountants are such nice people, they never give you feedback. Oh, you're doing a great job. 6 months in, I get summoned into his office, the semi-annual performance review. And he says, how do you think you're doing, Allan? I said, well, I think I'm doing pretty good. Is this like a discussion about going from staff to senior? And he looked perplexed, and he went in his desk drawer, and he took out the partnership agreement, and he sort of threw it my way, and he said, take a look at paragraph 16. I look at paragraph 16, and the headline says, mandatory retirement age 65. And I said, Howard, I think you got the wrong paragraph. He goes, oh, no, it's the right one. You asked me how long it would take for you to get the staff to senior, and based on our 65 mandatory retirement, I don't think you're going to make it.
No.
He goes, you are the worst accountant I've ever seen. He says, I got good news and bad news. He says, the bad news is you're fired. You're the worst accountant I've ever seen. It's a Friday. I said, what's the good news? He says, I want to rehire you on Monday. And I said, as what? He says, I don't know, but let's go figure it out. And little did I know at that moment on Monday, he would make me almost like the unofficial assistant to the managing partner and get me out of the making of the product into understanding how to build a successful accounting firm. And that was a life-changing thing. And I always said, like, I love marketing, but if I hadn't had the accounting degree, I wouldn't be sitting there. And then the rest is history. It becomes a fix. It becomes a passion. High-performing firms, high-performing partners.
Amazing.
Thank you.
What a cool story. Mm-hmm. What a cool story. Allan, it has been so good having you here with us. I could keep going. I could definitely keep going, but thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And with that, we'll wrap up our conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, help others discover our show. So follow, like, or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Resource Revolution.